done with one season, but now we're time for what some coaches around here call the second season. It's high school football playoff time. I'm Kyle Parmley, joined by Gary Lloyd. This is the Under the Lights podcast presented by SYNLawn. Gary, you got that quote earlier this year from Mountain Brook coach Chris Yeager. It's time for the second season, right?
It is time for the second season. And I'll say this, Friday night was our first game in November, November 1st, and it still felt like a late September night. Like I saw some people's glasses on the sidelines fogging up with the Alabama humidity. Can we keep the weather kind of how it is in November and not get the nights that require hot hands in the pocket, toe warmers in the shoes? If we could continue like it was Friday night, it will be a perfect second season.
Well, I don't know if you've looked at the forecast this far out, but there's a chance for some moisture on Friday.
No, we're not going to talk about that. We're not going to talk about that at all.
Yeah, but we're going to get there. All right. Before we dive into everything going on, let's tell you about our friends at SYNLawn, who have been a great sponsor partner with us all season long with the Under the Lights podcast and all of our coverage throughout the year. SYNLawn Alabama is your go-to for all things artificial turf. Whether you're looking to upgrade your backyard, create a pet-friendly space, or enhance your golf game with a custom putting green, SYNLawn has the solution for you. With top-notch installations for both residential and commercial use and wholesale turf sales, SYNLawn Alabama is the premier choice for artificial turf in the state. Give them a call at 205-590-9549 or visit their showroom at 2018 Old Montgomery Highway. SYNLawn artificial grass never looked more natural. All right, Gary, for everything going on Friday night, you know where to go. Follow us on X at UnderLights365. We keep you posted with all the games. It's going to be even more important that you do that this week because 3 of our 8 games are a long way away.
Long way.
Yeah. So we'll get to those. But week 11, the final week of the regular season, let's talk about it a little bit. We had a handful of games. And Gary, let's start with the game of the week. You had Vestavia Hills 28. Clay Chalkville 14. Some of the people that I was around on Friday night were quite surprised by this score line at the end of the game because Clay has been pretty impressive this year and Vestavia has been, battered and bruised quite a bit. And we didn't really know how this game would go. But was this Vestavia's most impressive win of the year?
I don't know, since it was my first time seeing them. I mean, yeah, on paper you say absolutely. Just the schedule they've played and to beat a top 5 Class 6A opponent. And I had some of those same questions asked to me on the sideline as Vestavia it was clear that they were in the driver's seat to win the game. Like, are you surprised by this? And I didn't really know how to answer it because on one hand, you're like, sure, Clay Chalkville, 8-1, defending state champ, that kind of thing. Vestavia, if you're a person who just looks at the record, you're like, yeah, this is surprising. But really, the way these teams are trending right now, I don't think we should be surprised at all. Coach Stuart Floyd for Clay Chalkville said as much to me after the game. He's like, we're just not very good right now. He's talking about from a player level, there's not a lot of leadership right now. Not a lot of guys stepping up. They seem kind of flat in some ways. That's my observation. They shoot themselves in the foot with self-inflicted penalties. They back themselves up. And then there's been a lack of explosive plays. Jabari Staples has been out the last week or two, their best receiver, probably trying to get him back ready for these playoffs. And then on the other side, Vestavia Hills is the most battle-tested high school football team in the history of the state of Alabama. Nothing phases them right now. They've played anybody, anytime, anywhere. And they were just the tougher team Friday night. You could tell that they wanted it more. Charlie Taft was doing his thing at quarterback. I was really impressed by him and really impressed with Bruce Littleton, who I asked Coach Rob Evans after the game who he would compare him to, since that was my first time seeing him play. And the night that he had, I was like, who would you compare him to? And he paused for a considerable amount of time. And as you know, it's kind of tough to stump Coach Evans. And he was a little stumped, and he gave me Mike Allstott, if you remember him from the Tampa Bay Bucks. And, he was that. He appeared to be that kind of player, big guy, and he can rumble and knock you down. And I came away really impressed with Vestavia Hills. And like we've talked about in previous podcasts, not unlike that 2022 Vestavia Hills team that was really starting to become a trendy pick as the playoffs began that year. This team will come in at 5-5, but make no mistake, this is not your typical 5-5 football team.
Let's take a moment and hear what both head coaches had to say after the game.
A lot of people take this week off.
Yeah.
What was the mindset
Two
like
schools
for
of
y'all?
thought. I mean, one was my time from Hoover left an indelible impression on me. We finished week 10 with 2 IMG games. That's always been in the back of my mind, and you play as good or better is what you're going to see in the playoffs. I think that team right there is as good or better than a lot of the teams that we could potentially see in the next couple of weeks. I have great respect for Stewart. We couldn't find games and they couldn't find games, and so 2 like-minded play anybody, anywhere, anytime programs say, let's play week 10 and may the best team win.
What did you think about your defense tonight?
Very proud of them. We didn't play well last week, and Hoover took it to us and responded them to play with physicality and toughness. Clay took it to us at various points in time tonight, but we bent, and to only give up 14 points to a really explosive offense, I'm very proud of them.
Tell me, Coach, what was going wrong tonight? Just what did you see from your guys?
I don't know. I mean, it's not very physical, and I don't know, very disconnected. We're not very good right now, I'm gonna be honest with you. Had trouble stopping the run, big plays. We get in the ball in the red zone offense, and we self-inflict ourselves. So self-implode penalties, the same thing every week. We've beaten a couple of good teams, but I would say the back half of the season, any quality team we struggled against. We have zero leadership, so it is what it is.
All right, the game I was at on Friday night, I got to see Briarwood beat McAdory 55-35. Offensive shootout in this one, but Briarwood, we're talking about 5-5 teams. This Briarwood team is not what you expect out of a 5-5 team either. I mean, this capping off a remarkable turnaround. It's really unfortunate that we don't get to see this team play anymore this year, because by the end of the year, they were one of the best teams in 5A. I mean, you can honestly say that. Luke Reynolds, we've talked there. His roller coaster journey kind of mirrors Briarwood's season. He gets hurt twice in the first 5 games of the year, and they finally get him back. And the second half of the year was unbelievable. He capped it off Friday night. What did he have? Like 205 yards and 5 touchdowns, I think is what I had him at. And we'll show a clip here of his final run. His final run as a Briarwood Christian School Lion will go down. I mean, you can see me in the clip. I'm on the sideline. I gave up on it. I see like him get near the sideline, and I just kind of back up, and I'm like, okay, well, he went out of bounds, and all of a sudden you hear the swell, like the roar of the crowd again, and I look up and he's in the end zone, and I don't know how he got there. But the video is unbelievable. It's a great encapsulation of the guy as a football player. And yeah, just it's really cool to see Briarwood continue to persevere this year. But man, to not see them play anymore after what we've seen the last 5 weeks, it kind of stinks.
It does, and I jokingly, but there's always a little bit of truth in jokes, right? Like Friday night, I think it was Friday night that news came out that Charles Henderson had to forfeit some games, and it was going to cast them out of the 5A playoffs. I was like, let's just put Briarwood in their spot, and let's just give them a chance here, because like you said, that Briarwood team this last half of the year, that's a top 5 team in Class 5A in the state of Alabama. And mentioned perseverance, and that's true. A lot of times perseverance still comes with like adversity, and I'm sure there was some, but this kind of perseverance this last half of the year for Briarwood came with domination, which you don't really see a lot of. Usually it's like you persevere and you're still kind of grinding. I mean, this team the last 2 weeks now has put up 105 points. They beat a really good 6A McAdory team. They put up 55 points on them. So yeah, this team finished just, my gosh, I can't emphasize how strong they finished this season after an 0-5 start. And it's such a shame that they're not in the playoffs, but that's the format we have. And you got to overcome those early adversities, and they weren't able to do it. But that is a special team finishing off what's really even though you don't make the playoffs, a special season in a special stadium. I've always said there's something about that place, and there clearly was Friday night.
Yeah, no, it was really cool to be there, and that's one of the reasons I went. I knew this was their last game, and wanted to see what they could do. One other fun little quip from the game. There was a moment. So McAdory scored first by blocking a field goal, catching it in the air, and returning it like 75 yards for a touchdown. Well, that had come right on the heels of a Briarwood turnover, and I think Garrett Witherington, the defensive lineman, recovered that fumble. And then, so he's standing over at the sideline after McAdory had scored, like a turnover that you'd think would, turn into points for Briarwood ended up turning into points for McAdory. And I look at Garrett, I'm like, well, y'all just got to keep forcing turnovers, I guess. And so he laughed and kind of, whatever. Well, Briarwood goes back out there and they force turnovers on the next 2 plays from scrimmage for McAdory. Like there was a stretch in the first half. McAdory ran 3 offensive plays and turned it over on all 3. And Garrett comes back over to the sideline. And it's like, I didn't mean every single play, but y'all do whatever you want to. One of those was like a tipped pick 6 for Will Clark. It was really cool. And then it was just kind of on from there. Luke Reynolds did a lot of his damage in the second half. I think he scored 4 of his 5 touchdowns then.
Yeah.
So kind of a really cool but somber way to end the season for Briarwood. But there you have it, 5-5. One of the really good teams in 5A that won't get to see the playoffs.
I mean,
It's going south.
yeah, it's 0-5. It's not looking good, and you've got a group of seniors that we meet together. And what do you want? And what do you expect? And we want to make the playoffs. Has always been a goal, but we didn't get that. But we want to get better was the second part of it. And so it's a credit to the community, the school, the parents, and then the coaching staff. I mean, our coaches bought in.
But another really cool Shelby County game we had Friday night. Oak Mountain beats Chelsea 16-14. Oak Mountain not making the playoffs, but they go out on a high note. Josh Renfro nails a 43-yard field goal with about 10 seconds to go to win the game. And here's what Coach Shane McComb had to say about it after the game.
In the first half, we came out and ran the ball better. Still wasn't a fantastic night overall. What we did what we had to do to win, and hats off to Renfro. A sophomore banging a 43-yarder after 2 timeouts. That's pretty phenomenal.
Talking about the third quarter, though, that
Yeah.
was kind of where you guys really found some things clicking offensively. What did you correct in that?
We just came back and run off. We're gonna stick with the run game, continue to do it. Coach Holder did a great job with play calls. We trusted our guys. We came out, did what we had to do to win the football game. We let one gap exchange bust on that long run on the defense. But besides that, they played lights out tonight. I was real proud of them. This is the deal about this season. Whether we made the playoffs this year or not, ultimately our goal was about winning more games than we did last year, obviously, number 1. But number 2, it was about, we talked about getting respect, which means we wanted to be competitive in every single football game. And besides that Hewitt game, I don't think anybody can doubt that we were in every game. We were in Hillcrest. We should have beat Prattville. We were in Hoover all night long. We were in Vestavia until the end of the third quarter. So I'm very proud of the program and the big step we took forward this season, and being competitive in every league game. That's a big step from where we were last year. So there's no doubt about it. Ultimately, our goal this year was about respect. Next year, our goal is to make the playoffs. We got to take that next jump.
Yeah, no, just a good win for Oak Mountain. I had seen them the previous week, and that defense did not look good against Hillcrest, and to limit Chelsea to 230 or so yards and 14 points, really finished the season on a high note that they wanted to. Obviously, not making the playoffs, but to go out with a win like that's a big deal. And if you're Chelsea, 4 straight losses to end the year, that's got to taste really sour after such a really good start.
All right, a few more. Homewood beats James Clemens 24-10, and crazily enough, the game wasn't even that close. Backup quarterback Caleb Carson gets another start, and this Homewood team, they're solid on offense, and that defense is just dominating people right now.
Freddie Lawrence season. Said it last week. I'll say it this week again, and he'll probably get on me this week when I see him for saying that. But yeah, holding that James Clemens offense to 10 points. Yeah, this team is solid all the way around right now, and then you probably look to likely get quarterback Will Myers back for this playoff run. And yeah, good night all around. Caleb Carson, I think, threw 2 picks, but you still win by 14 points. Kylan Newell had a really big night receiving. They ran the ball well. This team's just daggum solid right now, and I don't think you can call them a sneaky good team anymore heading into these playoffs. I think they're just a contender, honestly.
They're not sneaky, I don't think. Right across the tree line there, John Carroll beats West Blockton 38-20 to cap off the season. The Cavs, not the season they wanted, but I got to tell you, the way that they played over the last month of the year, you got to be feeling pretty good about the prospects for 2025.
Absolutely, you return some guys back, and you finish the year. You end a 3-game skid, and you score a season high in points. So you can't take everything from one game, but you really flash that potential and won a game at home by a considerable margin and put up a lot of points doing it. So kudos to them for finishing the season on a really high note.
In our final one, Spain Park 35, Gardendale 12, the first 10-0 regular season in program history for the Jags. Coach Tim Vakakis after the game admitted that, it was important to get 10-0, but now it's time to get down to it for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Like, I know Gardendale is now not going to the playoffs, but Driver Stadium is still a tough place to play, and Gardendale's a tough opponent. So to start slow like they did and still win a game by 23 points, like where you maybe didn't have your A game and that kind of thing, still it just speaks volumes about really how balanced this team is and how dominant it is. Like, they didn't pass for a ton of yards. Brock Bradley wasn't probably asked to do a ton. They didn't end up throwing for 130 yards or something like that. But CJ Calley and Dakari Shanks both go for 80 plus on the ground. And that defense is playing really, really well as well. So awesome to see a 10-0 season. We knew this team would be one of the better teams in 6A, but to go 10-0 and enter these playoffs that way is really, really cool and really, really awesome to see it.
Yeah, so that's what we got from last week. We want to thank SYNLawn for presenting that look at the Friday night highlights. All right, time for the top performers from last week. We had 4. You guys voted for the Under the Lights Player of the Week. Here's who we had. Briarwood running back Luke Reynolds, we talked about him, 33 carries, 205 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Incredible game. Homewood wide receiver Kylan Newell, Gary, you mentioned him, 8 catches for 124 yards. And then also you mentioned Vestavia Hills, still don't know what I call him, halfback, fullback, running back, all-purpose back.
Coach Evans calls him the H.
The H. Bruce Littleton, 167 total yards. He did that on the ground and through the air. 3 touchdowns for him on the night. And then Oak Mountain kicker Josh Renfro gets one of the nominees for kicking that game-winning 43-yard field goal for the Eagles. And drum roll, please. We've got the results right here. Homewood wide receiver Kylan Newell is who you guys voted as the Under the Lights Player of the Week. Congrats to Kylan. He had a great game and helping Homewood to that win over James Clemens. So there you have it. Just a reminder, we're brought to you by our friends at SYNLawn Alabama this year. And Gary, we have a full slate of first round playoff games to discuss. This will be undoubtedly a record for furthest from home that the Under the Lights Game of the Week will have emanated this Friday night. I will be making the trip all the way down to Sims, Alabama, to watch the Vestavia Hills Rebels take on Mary G. Montgomery in the opening round of the Class 7A playoffs. Vestavia comes in at 5-5 to face a 9-1 MGM team. You mentioned it. This 5-5 is not what 5-5 normally looks like when you're talking about Vestavia Hills. I think they have a real shot in this game if they play the way that they've been playing the last few weeks. And this Mary Montgomery team, there's a couple of really good teams in that region. We're going to talk about them a little bit with them and Baker. And we're about to find out how good Mobile area football is this year, because we kind of know what the Vestavias and Hewitts, Hoover, Thompson, we know what they are. And but to me, it seems like Vestavia has a real chance to go down there and pull off the upset.
I don't know. It's a 5-5 team against a 9-1 team. 5-5 team's got no shot, right?
Right.
That's what isn't that what I'm supposed to believe?
Uh-huh.
No, absolutely not. No, you're right that, I mean, you're going what? How have you Google Maps this thing yet? What are you, 4 hours, 4.5 hours?
3 hours and 37 minutes from the office here in Homewood. Sims is a little
Okay.
bit north of Mobile.
Okay, so not as bad as I thought. I think Hewitt-Trussville to Baker is like 4 hours and 5 minutes or something like that. But yeah, I mean, you're going to have to bring your best game. I mean, it is still, Vestavia Hills can play that schedule, and they have. They are much more battle tested. I'm kind of making that a cliche, but they're much more tested than Mary Montgomery. Like, you can just look at opponents' records. Like, I was doing some of this Friday night. Let me look at this real quick. Vestavia Hills opponent 62-36 this year. That's the regular season. That's not including Mary Montgomery. If it was including them, it'd be 71-37. That's crazy. 7 of those 10 teams Vestavia faced have winning records. 5 of them made the playoffs. And then you look at Mary Montgomery, their opponents are 47-52, and only 3 of them are above 500. So tells us something we kind of already know, that Vestavia is more tested. But like you said, you still got to travel 3.5 hours. And for me, it comes down to which Vestavia shows up. Like when they played at Hoover, they kind of got dominated up front.
Yep.
Right? Like they kind of lost that game in the trenches. And then against Clay, they really got a push against a Clay team that we know is really, really good year in and year out. So I think it kind of comes down to that. If you can go down there and play your most physical game and really run the ball well, I think they have a really, really good shot of going down there and winning.
I do not disagree with any of that. I think you're dead on. Let's talk about the other two 7A Region 3 teams that we've got in the playoffs. Hewitt-Trussville heading to Baker, a pair of 8-2 teams squaring off here. We kind of mentioned it last week, but this is a tricky spot because this is Hewitt-Trussville heading to Baker, which is coached by Juan Johnson, who's a longtime offensive coordinator for the Huskies under Josh Lloyd. I think he was the OC 8 years, something like that. So a lot of familiarity between these two coaching staffs and what they like to do. It ultimately is going to come down to who plays the best, but I know there's a lot of headspace and conversation being devoted in these coaching rooms to, oh man, we can't do that. They're going to know what's coming, or we got to mix it up. There's going to be some head games going on for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And we've kind of said these things already, that you have to travel that far away. That's an adversity in and of itself. You're going somewhere unfamiliar. It's 4 hours away against an opponent you haven't faced, but also defense travels, and that Hewitt-Trussville defense is probably the best in 7A, and Baker's defense has been really good as well. I mean, these teams have identical 8-2 records. And let me look at this, because I had to pull some stuff since we don't see these teams every week, like Baker and Mary Montgomery. But those 4 combined losses for Hewitt and Baker, they have been by a combined 16 points. So these teams have been absolutely right there. I mean, Baker's 2 losses are to Jackson, which is a 4A team that is the best team in 4A. I'm sorry. They're fantastic. And they only lost that game 20-13. And then they lost an overtime 34-31 game to Mary Montgomery. So this Baker team, Juan Johnson in his first year's got them playing really, really well. And you have to give them somewhat of an edge. I mean, they're playing at home, and while Hewitt-Trussville is having to travel so far. And, I don't know what you're going to get, because we haven't seen these teams. I think Hewitt-Trussville is really going to have to do a good job against that quarterback, Tate Graham, down there, because he's a big kid. Got to get him on the ground and force him into some throws. And I know they've got a kid at Baker that has been kind of a do-it-all kid on offense that has the best football name in the state. Have you seen it?
What is it?
Speedy Wheeler.
Nice.
It's the most perfect football name. So gonna have to limit Speedy and keep those guys contained. But I think this is one of the more just with all the coaching stuff surrounding this game, and then obviously the matchup itself. This is, I think, one of the best first round matchups that we've got in 7A.
I hope Juan Johnson sees this portion of the podcast and calls me to tell me what we are wrong about, right about, and everything.
I hope so too. He should come on and tell us.
Yeah, seriously. Juan's a great guy. I hope that game is compelling. Another Region 3 game. Hoover at 8-2, playing host to Fairhope at 5-5. Hoover gets this first round home game as a result of winning the region. They've been playing really well lately. Those wins over Thompson and Vestavia, I would say, is the best Hoover's looked all year. They seem to have figured out what works for them. And you talked about it even earlier, like the way that they dominated Vestavia up front in that game was really, really, really impressive to me. So if Hoover can replicate that, I think they have the upper hand against Fairhope here.
Yeah, and I think you're exactly right. I think this is a game that Hoover just treats very businesslike. You know, we're used to seeing a 5-5 team come to the Hoover Met in the first round. We're just used to them driving south instead of driving north. So we've got a 5-5 Fairhope team instead of like a 5-5 Bob Jones team or something like that. And you know, Fairhope kind of, not unlike Chelsea, kind of had that in their region. They kind of had a backloaded region schedule, and you know, lost like 3 straight down the stretch, and those were to Mary, Montgomery, Daphne, and Baker. So you know, they kind of finished out on their tough end, and so they're kind of limping in a way. And I think this Hoover team is just going to have a very much a business-like approach and move on to the second round.
All right, let's talk about some of our 6A games that we've got. Well, we've got a handful of them, I guess. Mountain Brook at 7-3, paying a visit to Southside Gadsden. Southside finished up at 6-4. I don't really know what to expect here because the Southside losing to Pell City 45-7 last week has really thrown me for a loop. And look, I don't know the specifics. I don't know if you rested some. I don't know. I don't get it. That result makes no sense to me based on the rest of the body of work of both of those teams.
Yeah, I have no idea either. I talked to Southside's coach Ben Stewart last week, but it was before that Pell City game. I haven't talked to him since that game. So, like you, I don't know. But here's one thing I feel fairly confident in saying about this game Friday night. This will be the first of our games that is done Friday night. Because both of these teams, you know, we've talked about Mountain Brook all year and how they run the ball 80-90% of the time, and that's their bread and butter. Southside likes to run it as well. So I think you're going to see a whole lot of handoffs and a whole lot of running. And I don't know where to go on this game. Like, because like you said, that Pell City result throws me for a loop. And, you know, Southside earning that 2 seed after beating Gadsden City in their first matchup ever. I don't know. I feel like a lower scoring first 1 to 21 kind of game is kind of what I feel like. And I think it's going to be physical. Southside's got some big kids now. They've got an offensive tackle committed to Duke, who's really good. Their wide receiver is playing quarterback now, and he's been good since coming back from an injury. He had to take over at quarterback because their quarterback got hurt. So they're a really resilient team. Ben Stewart's in his first year as head coach, but I mean, he's coached under Josh Niblett at Hoover. He's coached under Sam Adams at Oxford. So his connections run deep and are really, really successful guys. And I know he'll have his guys ready to go. And this will be a fun trip for some people from Mountain Brook. You know, Andy Urban, the athletic director, you know, he was once upon a time, he was the Southside Gadsden quarterback. So he's a Rainbow City guy. So he's heading back home in a way. And I'm sure he'll, you know, Friday at 4 p.m. he'll be hitting up Pruitt's barbecue and getting some food out there. So there's some cool connections in this game that you might not know about. But I think this one also has the potential to be really competitive.
I wonder, does Southside play at the same stadium? I wonder if Andy Urban will give kind of a tour of the facility and
Barney Hood.
Show us the blades of grass that he made famous or any of that.
Yeah. That's when I was talking to Coach Stewart over there, he said he would before Friday, before Mountain Brook gets there, he said that he said his what did he say? He said his statue would be well polished. For them
Hopefully it looks
there.
better than Dwayne Wade's statue.
Oh my gosh. So like I've had nightmares about that thing since they showed it.
So we'll see. Hopefully that's a good one. Yeah. And like you said, any Mountain Brook people that are kind of on the fence, make the trip. Like that's a cool place you don't get to go to very often. Yeah, that'll be fun, a great matchup and a cool, unique place to go watch a ball game. Clay
sure.
Chalkville, on the other hand, will be at home. We all know Cougar Stadium very well. They're hosting Gadsden City. Gadsden City finished up 6-3. Maybe Gadsden City didn't quite finish the year as strongly as I thought they would. I kind of thought at the start of the year that this team would be one of the more formidable 6A teams around, and they didn't quite live up to that, but they're still a very good team. And based on what we saw from Clay Chalkville last week, Clay Chalkville better up its level quickly, or they might be vulnerable.
Yeah, yeah, and I agree about Gadsden City. You know, you start off the year, you beat Muscle Shoals in the very first game, and yeah, 6-3. I mean, you know, that's a tough. That's kind of a tough draw because while they are 6-3 and third in that region, you do feel like, kind of like you said, with Gadsden City, you do feel like there is that potential that they're better than what they've shown. You just hope they don't show it against you, especially now. And Clay Chalkville, you know, this back half of the season, you know, when they've played opponents who are, let's just say it, when they've played really quality opponents, they've kind of faltered a bit, and most of that has been self-inflicted. Like I said earlier, with, you know, pre-snap penalties, you know, holding calls, not hitting on explosive plays, drop balls, that kind of thing. You've got to clean that up, and you've got to do it now, or there won't be a next Friday night. So I would expect Jabari Staples to be back at receiver, you know, and, you know, at the same time, while they have had those struggles, I should say that Joshua Woods and Aaron Osley still running the ball really well. So you've got a two-headed monster back there that you can really have the luxury of leaning on if you're struggling in the passing game, or to, you know, to create separation, that kind of thing. Those guys have been rock solid all year. So I would expect Clay Chalkville to really, you know, kind of shift its mindset and really lock in for this one and get this win, but it certainly won't be easy.
All right. Another 6A matchup, Homewood hosting Athens. Both of these teams 8-2, but I feel a little bit differently about them. I think Homewood is the better team on paper here, just if you look at resumes. Will Myers expected back, ? I think, at quarterback. But I think it's been shown over the last couple of weeks that Caleb Carson is more than capable of leading Homewood without it just being, you know, a train wreck by any stretch. You know, they've been really impressive in their last two wins. So we'll see who they play at quarterback. But this Homewood team, if they play defense like they have been in the last month or so, they're going to be hard to beat.
Yeah, I'm excited to go to this one at Waldrop, just with, like, I was reading something about from Athens coach Cody Gross last week about I think the team motto at Athens is "Tough people win," I think is what he said, and I kind of feel that with Homewood to a degree too. So I'm expecting a dogfight of sorts. You know, like, I do think Homewood's probably the better team. You know, I mean, Athens is 8-2, but you get home field advantage, and, you know, Athens has some really good players. Quarterback, Coach Son Brogan, good quarterback. Xavier Edwards can run the ball really well. So Homewood will have its hands full, but I'm looking forward to a game in the trenches at Waldrop Stadium Friday night, and really start my playoff coverage with some of that just gritty football. That's what I'm expecting Friday anyway.
Love it. And then let's see, Spain Park at 10-0 playing host to McGill-Tulane at 6-4. This is the one matchup we didn't quite know coming into last week, but McGill-Tulane took care of business. They get that 4 seed out of Region 1, and they will make the trip up here to play the unbeaten Jaguars. I'm excited to see what this Spain Park team can do in the playoffs.
Yeah, and the only time these two teams have played was that 2015 7A state title game that was 14-12, and I think we can say with some certainty this game won't be 14-12. I think Spain Park's probably the much better team here, and I feel like they've had a good mindset all year long. You know, like, while they have been really good and, you know, undefeated, but just that week to week mindset, they always seem to kind of be where their feet are as a group, and that's a testament to Coach Tim Dukakis and that staff. And I think they've done a really good job managing really this kind of success that they've had. I think they've done it in a really humble way, and I expect intangibles like that to pay dividends now that we're in this second season.
I do too. McGill is you mentioned that 2015 state championship run. McGill had a stretch in the 2010s basically that they were double digit wins just about every year. But this is their first playoff appearance since 2021. So they're back in the postseason looking to be on the rise again. But like you said, Spain Park is the better team here. And one last playoff matchup, Chelsea at 6-4, making the trip to unbeaten Saraland. I'd just be honest, I do not see a path to victory for Chelsea in this one. I did exchange texts with Todd Cassidy last week, and he's the ultimate football coach. He's going to get his guys ready to go. They're going to go down there and give it what they've got. And at the end of the day, that's all you can do. And if you play your best game and Saraland just doesn't show up, then you got a chance. But I think ultimately this season will be remembered as a success either way for Chelsea. I just, they had such a rough go of it in 7A to get back to 6A and win some big ball games and compete and all that. I mean, it's probably going to end on Friday night, but I think they'll have a lot to hang their hat on from this year.
Yeah, this will be one of those groups, especially how people remember like a senior class as kind of foundational in a way. And, a lot of that is dropping back to 6A, but, just because you drop to 6A doesn't mean you're guaranteed wins. Like 6A is probably, has the most depth of any classification, I think. And, to start 6-0 and earn a playoff spot despite faltering down the stretch, yeah, ultimately that's a successful year after what you've had to go through in 7A and some of those tough seasons. But yeah, good luck this Friday night, because Ryan Williams or not, Saraland is an incredible football team, and they've still got KJ Lacey at quarterback going to Texas, and a host of other D1 guys. So they've only played like 2 close games out of their 9 all year. I think at St. Paul's they maybe struggled a little bit and beat that Jackson team that I mentioned earlier out of 4A. That's a really good 4A team. But they gave up 27 points to Jackson, they haven't allowed more than 17 the rest of the way. So points are going to be hard to come by, and stopping that Saraland offense is going to be hard as well. They're one of the best in the state. So tough draw.
No doubt. And I always love when we get, there's some years where some teams are disappointing and it's kind of a bummer. But I mean, look, under the lights here, we cover 11 teams and 8 of them made the playoffs. And the 3 that didn't, I mean, Oak Mountain capped off the year on a high note. John Carroll capped off the year on a high note, and Briarwood was great in the second half of the year. So all 11 football programs that we cover, lots of good things to take away. And yeah, I think that's really good, because it's just a bummer when you just like see a football program going nowhere and realize we still kind of have to cover it and try to not act like it sucks. I mean, we act like it doesn't suck, but 8 teams will start a playoff journey, and I'm ready to roll.
Yeah, to your point, like there's people might take that a certain kind of way if they don't do what we do on Friday nights and covering these teams, but I'll echo it forever. You're exactly right. It stinks to cover a team, because we've been there, in the past where we've covered teams that are going nowhere, where there's not buy-in necessarily from administration, from community, certainly from players and stuff. And that's no fun for anybody. But we don't have that with these 11 teams. Like you said, 8 of them are in the playoffs, which means there is buy-in, which means there is success. And then, like you said, those other 3, we know what it's like at John Carroll after what they did last year, and taking a step back this year with a lot of guys graduating, but that future is bright there. Oak Mountain, that they've, leaps and bounds better than last year. So going into a year 3 under Coach McComb, can't wait to see what happens there. And Briarwood, we know, they're a mainstay, and they'll always bounce back. So this has been, as far as regular seasons go, this has been one of our our best overall, I think, in terms of just the types of teams we've covered and the successes that they've had. And can't wait to see what these 8 do in the playoffs and see who the last ones are standing.
Sounds good. We'll call that our goal line stand, which was about as good as Ohio State's 2 goal line stands last weekend against Penn State. But it's playoff time. So Gary, we're recording this on a Monday morning. I hate to say this, but with rain in the forecast Friday, there is a possibility that some teams move up to Thursday, but we'll see. Stay tuned on that front. Fingers crossed we don't get there, but that's kind of how this show works. So we'll see. But yeah, we appreciate you guys listening. Thanks to SYNLawn for being along for the ride this year. It's been a great high school football season. 11 weeks down, 5-ish to go. I would imagine 1 or 2 of our teams makes the Super 6, Super 7. But we'll see. We will see. It's going to be a fun ride through the month of November. The weather might cool down at some point, but Gary, you ready for the big show? The second season, that's what we call it.
I'm ready. I'm ready to see how you fill out your bracket and see your predictions for that bulletin board material.
Yeah, I'll get right on that. But all right, everybody, we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching and listening and for all the support throughout the season.